I guess we'll get started, and we will I'll keep an eye on and admit people as it goes in. The chat should be open. So if you have questions for us during this, just pop them into the chat, and we'll answer the best we can. My name is Don Rank. I'm the chairman for the Pennsylvania chapter of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. I'm joined by John Kline, our policy advisor for Pennsylvania. And today we want to talk about advocacy, basic advocacy for hunters and anglers. My soapbox issue for many years has been that hunters and anglers don't use their voice enough, and just sometimes just don't have the tools to let themselves be heard. And I would just love everybody to be able to contact their legislator with some confidence, uh, in person, email, phone call. Lots of things we're going to talk about tonight, but just be able to get involved so that we can use our voice to, forward the cause of conservation in general. So we're going to go through the process of starting with the basics of how a bill gets started. We're going to use it in the background of kind of the work we've done in Pennsylvania, talk about a couple particular bills as examples, and then talk about how you can use that knowledge and get involved yourself. Like I said, any questions, just pop them in the chat. So, John, let's start out. How's the bill get started? We monitor these bills, we go for them, against them, but how does a bill really get started?
Well, first of all, Don, thanks, and thanks everybody for joining. And I hope we give you some information that will help you and help all of us advance the cause. As Don said initially, our voices need to be heard more and more. And besides being just a constituent for a legislator, being a person who's active in the outdoors, it's a very strong constituency, especially here in a state like Pennsylvania, where there's nearly 800,000 licensed hunters. So it's really, really strong. But so I'll just start by saying that whether you like it or not, and sometimes we don't like it, the regulatory and legislative process affects all of us in virtually any aspect of our lives. And it's important for us, and we're all busy with all the things we're doing in our lives, to watch and see how legislation is moving and regulatory matters. But as far as the origin of a bill, Don, what really, it can come from a lot of different places, and usually there's some issue, or I'm going to say a problem, but some issue that a constituent of a legislator has, and contacts he or she and lets them know what's going on, and where the problem is. And that legislator, if they're responsive, and most are, will begin the process. And that process is begun by circulating what we here in Pennsylvania call a co-sponsor memo, where the legislators will start asking other legislators to support them in their effort. And that process in that process, a bill is formed, language is formed, and whatever the subject might be.
And before a bill gets dropped, there's a co-sponsor memoranda. So basically a notification that a bill's coming out, asking other senators, representatives,
Right,
to co-sponsor that memo, that legislation when it comes out. And that's basically like a warning shot that this legislation's coming.
Right. That's exactly right. And that's what happens. And then the depending upon the subject of the bill, then it's up to leadership in either chamber, the Senate or the House, to assign that bill to a committee. And here in Pennsylvania, virtually every other state, that there are various committees. We have game and fisheries committees here in the state that deal just with those bills that fall into that subject matter. So that bill, that memo then gets a bill number, goes to that committee, and then it's up to the chair of that committee to have hearings on that bill, whether they're informational hearings to gather information. And it's at that point that people like us, backcountry hunters and anglers and other constituency groups need to have their voices be made known in and around those committees, because that's really where the sausage is made, if you will. Language and all the details are worked out before a bill even gets to the floor of a chamber.
Yeah. And that's a lot of times when we have our own discussions about what the work we're doing for the chapter is one of us will see a co-sponsor memoranda and say, what do you think of this that's coming out? And then we'll keep an eye out, because then that bill often drops within a week or two, sometimes longer. And then once that bill drops, you have a number, and you can start making your approaches, especially to first of all to the person who is sponsoring the bill, to let them know you're supporting it. So we're in the instance of like Senate Bill 67 for Sunday hunting. When Senator Lachlan dropped that, we contacted him, let him know we are in fully support of the bill, and we want to help out any way we can to get that passed. But we also contacted the Senate chair, because Senator Rothman, who's the chair of the Game and Fish Committee, he runs the show. So we want to let him know that we're in support of that bill, and hopefully can come to a committee vote sometime.
That's exactly right. And remember, in your state legislature, for example, here in Pennsylvania, we have 253 legislators. That includes 50 senators and 203 House members. You don't have to contact all 253. As you point out correctly, the prime sponsor of the bill, and that's the word used, the prime sponsor is important. The chair of the affected committee, in our case, Game and Fisheries in most cases, and leadership. These are the people that really control the calendar and control where bills go. Now, that doesn't let you off the hook. That doesn't mean you can only talk to 3 people. Those are the key people that you need to get to quickly to let your points be known, and then work on. And when I say work on, I mean contact and let your voice be heard for all the other members of the committee, whether they are perceived to be your friends or not. They have a vote, and it's important to let your position be known.
Yeah, and you can also ask people to co-sponsor the bill to hopefully round up more support. Another bill that we were very involved in getting put forward with Senator Gephardt is Senate Bill 344, which would allow if out-of-state college students to get a hunting license at the in-state resident rate for 4 years, so that they're not spending all that extra money. So they don't to get a hunting license while they're living off of ramen noodles and whatnot while they're in college. They can afford a basic hunting license, and it's important because that's a big demographic where hunting participation drops off those 4 years. So that's one of the reasons we were very involved in getting that bill put forward. So once the senator put that out there, we went to other senators and asked them to co-sponsor it.
Right. 344, as you correctly point out, it's important. And this is a case where the Pennsylvania chapter did a lot of homework and found out that the college age demographic, for example, it's not a big surprise to any of us, is where a lot of hunting licenses drop off, and people that understand funding in the North American model and Pittman Robertson and all those things know that the number of hunting licenses that are sold in a particular state is very, very important, number one. And number two, that just the R3 effort in general to keep people, whether they're in-state residents or not, interested and active participating in hunting here just benefits all of us. So 344, we applaud Senator Gephardt, Lebanon County, who's the prime on this. The bill has passed the Senate. Right now, it is in the House Game and Fisheries Committee, and it has to take the same path that it just took in the Senate. And we get it to the governor's desk.
Yeah. And as those things, then you start greasing the wheels on the other side of the legislature, letting them know that this bill's coming and it's going to be coming to your committee, or talk to the leadership in either the Senate or the House that this bill is coming over, and we would very much appreciate your support. on this bill, and
Exactly.
this is the reason why. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly right. Two
Yeah.
chambers, same in every state. It takes a if not identical, very, very similar path in each chamber, and you've got to make sure that leadership on in both chambers and on both sides of the aisle, know your position. It's important too, while we're talking about that, Dawn, to remind people that even there's people that are going to coming right out of the gate. They're going to be for you, and they're going to be against you, and that's life. That's how it works in our democracy, and it's fine. But we always try our best to approach everybody with an even keel and with as much respect due as we can give them. And the reason for that is just because an individual member in either chamber may or may not vote for if they, let's say they're not in favor of the action that you're supporting, bear in mind, and you may be disappointed with that, but bear in mind that in the very near future after that, you're going to need that person's vote for something else. Here in Pennsylvania, we have a full-time legislature, runs about a 18 to 20 month cycle. And there's a whole lot of bills that come down the road. And just because a person votes no on a bill that you supported, while that may disappoint you, keep in mind that you may need that person's support on something else that may come down the road very, very soon, and you may get it.
Yeah, yeah, that's an important thing, because you don't want to burn your bridges and not be able to go into that person's office ever again because of one vote.
Sure. Yeah. We do that all the time. And then, a little bit more on the nuts and bolts. A bill once it passes out of a committee with a favorable vote, requires three votes on the floor in each chamber. Then it goes in one chamber, then it goes to the other chamber, follows the exact same path. Then it's presented to the governor. And here in Pennsylvania, if a bill is passed, the governor has 10 days to sign or to veto the bill. If he or she signs the bill, it becomes law in whatever number of days is prescribed in the language. Typically, it's 30, sometimes 60, sometimes 10. But if he or she vetoes the bill, then it gets kicked back to the Senate, where it would require a 2/3 majority to override. Very, very difficult to get done anywhere.
Yeah. So on the floor, when it comes out of the House and the Game and Fish Committee, it's usually the committee we're dealing with. It does go to appropriations for
Right. Every bill, I missed that step. I apologize. Thank you for pointing that out. Every bill that goes through really any committee, whether it's Game and Fish or Transportation, whatever it might be, requires a fiscal note. That's the term we use here in Pennsylvania. And that fiscal note is done by sending the bill to the Appropriations Committee. Now, the Appropriations Committee has one duty, and that is to review bills, to assess and approve or disapprove any bill, depending upon the impact to fiscally to the Commonwealth, whether to see what kind of budget impact. Now, typically with game and fisheries bills here in Pennsylvania, because the Pennsylvania Game Commission and the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission, neither one receives general fund revenue. So the impact to taxpayers is almost zero. The fiscal note may read that it'll have an impact on the operations of fish and boat or game, but generally not the taxpayer at all.
Yeah, so I don't know if it makes it easier that it's not involved in any of the budget negotiations.
It's easier in one way, but we have a unique way of approving budgets for both commissions as well, and that's it's a very interesting system.
So we talked about some of the key decision makers, the chairs of the committees, but who were the other key decision makers in leadership on either side that we'll have to approach at different times?
Right. So in the case of backcountry, what we do is it's not just a once and done thing, as you know, Don, you and your board. It's, we have a constant presence in the Capitol. That's very, very important, because you want to become a resource for the people that are making these decisions, that are actually writing the bills. So inside the committee, each and every committee has an executive director. That's a key position. This is a person whose job is to gather all the data on a specific issue, perhaps write the language of the bill, consult with the chair of the committee, consult with people outside to try to get language down that makes sense. And that's where we have a very, very strong impact and a strong rapport. It's very important to stay in touch with those people, because they're the ones that are really doing the legwork, their staff work, if you recall that term, to present to the committee chair. So there's a committee chair, a majority and minority in each chamber, and then those people then, once a bill is voted favorably, for example, out of a committee, then it's up to the floor leader, the majority floor leader, to move the bill. But all the while, you have to make sure that you stay in touch with floor leaders on both sides. That would be Democrats and Republicans. And there's another thing that I would be remiss if I didn't mention as well. Our legislature, just like any other legislature in any other state, is made up of people from all walks of life. That's by design. That's a good thing. There's people that come from a professional background, people that come from a blue collar background, come from an agriculture background. It doesn't matter if they come from all walks of life, and that's a good thing. Not everybody understands or is used to the kind of hunting, fishing, public land, outdoor and recreation world that you and I and people that I'm sure are watching this video, come from. So there's an education component that goes along with that, because remember, those 253 people have votes, and that's how you get a bill across the finish line, is the majority vote. So you work on key members, and then inside each one of the four caucuses, and I say four caucuses, Republican, Democrats in the Senate, Republicans, Democrats in the House, there are people that can advocate for you inside those caucus rooms, and that's an important thing that we try to work on too.
And when you say people come from all backgrounds and all walks of life, you think of just a greater, you look at the general population, 4% of the general population hunts. So when you back in, maybe the 60s and 70s, most of the legislators hunted or fished or knew people that did. Now that's not the case. So when you're presenting yourself, you can be a font of knowledge for them. And sometimes it's just there's just like a knowledge deficit towards one issue or another, and people just don't understand what you're talking about. But once you present your case and present yourself, some facts and just a very matter of fact explanation of why this bill is important or why this bill shouldn't go somewhere, because sometimes there's bills you're opposing. Some people may change their minds. Some people may not have an opinion at all until you present yourself to them, and then you're also, because you've been that quality person who has approached them respectfully, gave them good information. When something else comes around, they're more apt to listen to you.
And that is the absolute key to advocacy in any in any part of the world you're working in. You bring up a couple of very interesting things. It is a sad fact that less and less legislators participate in hunting and fishing, and it's not because they're bad people. That's the way our society has changed and evolved over the years. But what that reminds you and me and other advocates who might be listening is the importance of your work. You need to be that voice. It doesn't just because a person, like I said, just because a person doesn't necessarily engage in hunting and fishing doesn't make them against what you do. If they don't know, they just don't know. Okay. And the other point that you bring up that's very, very important is how you approach and respect that person, that legislator, that staff member, because remember what I said when we started, you're going to need that person's support guaranteed on something down the road. And the position that you ultimately want to be in as an advocate is for not just legislators, but most particularly staff people and regulators to call you ahead of time and say, hey, Dawn, where's your group on this issue? How do you people feel about this sort of thing? You want to become that font of knowledge. That's ultimately your goal in enemy advocacy.
And that can work against you as well, because in other states where they've advanced minor anti-hunting laws, and then they've moved on to, like, they start with trapping and then move on to something else. Those anti-hunting groups have come and made their case, and the bill goes through, and someone who doesn't have a background in hunting and fishing goes, well, they didn't steer me wrong last time, so this next bill I should support too. So if you're not the one calling them and letting them know how you feel and what your points are, someone else is too, and they may have their ear for the next bill that comes through.
Yeah, no question about it. No matter what side of an issue you're on, you can rest assured that there's somebody on the other side. And in the case of hunting and fishing, it is another unfortunate fact that folks that don't believe in this American tradition and pastime that we try our best to maintain and hand down to generations, shouldn't be done. They're well organized, they're well funded. And that's something that you constantly got to keep in mind. And while we're talking about that, I just want to touch on a couple of things regarding constituencies and when you make contacts with public officials. First of all, don't be afraid; they work for you, and that's the absolute truth. Each and every one of us has a state senator and has a House member or General Assembly member. As a constituent, as a voter, you have every right to contact that person to let your feelings be known on a particular matter. And it's important that you do that because they really do listen to you. Whether they'll vote your way or not, remains to be seen. But they value your input, and it can't be underestimated.
Yeah, that brings us to approaching a legislator. There's different ways you can do it. We put out action alerts at different times. We don't, when a bill comes out, we'll put out action alerts at key moments. So it's going to a committee. It's going to go for a committee vote. It's going to go for a floor vote. Certainly, we try to be strategic in sending out our action alerts, because if I send one out every day on the same issue, it's just going to go into the trash bucket of your email, and you're not going to pay attention to it. But also, there's a time to flex your muscles, and there's time to just to wait for it. But like, as an individual, as a constituent, it's never a bad time to approach your legislator. So like, the easiest way is action alert, click, and you'll get the email. But some of the other ways that may have more impact than that, as an individual.
Yeah, there's plenty. They're very, very important. So as an organization, you don't want to become that organization or the boy that cries wolf, because if you put out an action alert on everything at every time, nobody's going to pay attention to it. So leadership at BHA at the state level and at the national level monitors bills and where they are. So those action alerts, whether people believe it or not, are really, really timed for key moments when the support is needed, because you don't want it to be diluted or watered down in any way. But making contact with your individual state rep or senator is really quite easy. You can go on the legislature's website. They all have district offices, probably very close to your home. They have to, and they have to make time for you to visit. You can physically visit them in their district office. You can come to the state capitol. It's a public building. call their office and let your voices be known. One of the other things, particularly with backcountry and other organizations like ours, that you need to do, and this helps the legislator in a lot of ways, is let them know what you're doing all the time. And what I mean by that is, if you're having a regional event, whether it's a fishing derby, a fly tying thing, some sort of hunting opportunity, let your legislator know about it. A picnic, a dinner, invite them. Let them. Yeah, pint nights, right? Let them know what you're doing, and or their senior staff members that we talked about, because then they become comfortable with you. And remember what I said: if they have a question, you're the person that you want them to call, and that's how you do that. So if your club has a monthly meeting, invite them every month, standing invitation. This is when, you want 5 minutes to talk to our group, you can have it. And they'll appreciate that, because, your constituents.
And I always kind of like rank it in the easiest to like the most effort in contacting a legislator. So the easiest is clicking on an action alert whenever it comes out.
Right.
And then gradually getting harder, but still pretty easy, is going on to the legislators' website themselves and just putting your own note in, right? Or because there's a contact form, and you can just put that in there. On every single legislator has some website.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you want to pick up a phone and call, there's two versions of that. One, if you don't want to talk to anybody, just call after hours and leave a message. They're going to get it. And even when I've spoken to somebody during regular hours, I don't think I've ever spent more than 2 minutes on a phone, because they answer your call. They want to know if you're a constituent. They want to know what you're supporting or opposing, and then they take a tally, right, John? It's just like, we got phone calls for this.
They do indeed, and don't forget, the important the bills that are important to people like us in the hunting and fishing world aren't the only things that they're dealing with. They're dealing with transportation bills, education, tax bills, whatever it might be. So there's a whole lot of balls that they're trying to juggle. And it sounds like I'm defending them, and I kind of am in one way. Just know that that there's a lot of good people that are still out there that can and will work for you, but you've got to let your voice be known in this period of time, most especially as our numbers shrink. It's tough.
Yeah, and then the other thing, if you really want to put a lot of effort, you can make an appointment and go meet them in their office and just tell them what you're supporting or opposing. And that's, if you're really riled up and want to go talk to somebody. But the phone call is an incredibly effective way to contact your legislator. And it also, I don't know, it seems like they give a lot of credence to phone calls, in that if one person's calling, it might be important to a lot more people, because they get 10 phone calls on something that's huge. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, don't underestimate it. You may think you're the only one out there, but if they get a couple, they watch and they listen to the numbers, and like I said, most are responsive. Even this is going back to what I said before about needing their help, even when they don't get, even if you can't convince him or her to go your way, you've made your voice known, and you're going to come around, because guaranteed there's going to be another issue that you're going to have to deal with a week or two down the road.
Yeah. And something gets I think gets lost a lot is the bill comes for a vote and your legislator supports it. You've asked them to support it, or you've asked them to oppose it, whatever, they voted your way. Call them and thank them, or send an email and thank them, because they know. Well, it's no one ever called to thank anybody. People only call to complain, so that stands out. But also, it lets them know you paid attention to their vote.
Exactly. Yeah. Courtesy is something that's waning in this world nowadays. But yeah, it's very, very important, and that builds your credibility, because your credibility goes back to you being a resource, and they'll know that you're serious about the issue. And while I'm talking about resource too, if and when you get calls about um, input, or where you stand on something, make sure your answers are accurate. If they're not, tell them that you'll get the best information you can. Be responsive, get back as quickly and as accurately as you can. But that's a good position to be in, to be contacted. But you're right. I'll always thank them for the vote. And like I said, if it doesn't go your way, well, we'll pick up and move on to the next one, because this machine never stops.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So what if your legislator opposes the bill? Say it's an anti-Sunday hunting representative senator. Like,
Yeah, well,
what do you?
people.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah. So people that know me know that sometimes you'll get into a position where you're simply going to have to count votes. Uh, I have three numbers taped right to my monitor in my computer in my office, that's never moved for the last 20 years. And those three numbers are 103, 26, and 1. And what that means here in Pennsylvania is you need 103 votes in the House, 26 senators, and the governor to get a bill passed. And if a person is a hard no against what it is you're advocating for, let that go, because you're not going to you're wasting your time spending all your energy on that person. You don't have to badmouth them. Remember what I said, you're going to need them for something else. Let that go. Work on the people that, and then you're going to have people that are absolutely with you. That's wonderful. But it's the folks in the middle that have these questions. Hey, I don't know about this. What should I be doing? Those are where you can have the most and the best influence. So you're going to get some hard no's. There's a lot of people, as I said at the outset, that don't believe in the things that you and I and our constituents do, and we don't hate them for that, but that's how they are and that's where they are, and we've got to work with them.
yeah. And every once in a while, you can if you make a convincing argument and they haven't really thought about it, you can swap their vote. I mean, I've had my previous senator before redistricting was an anti-Sunday hunting, was against the original bill that passed for the 3 Sundays. And I sent an email, explained my point. I encouraged my family members who are also voters in the district to send an email as well. But after a few meetings, her vote changed. It was a Senator Collette. Like she was against it, and then she voted. She eventually voted for it and was
Right.
a supporter.
Right, and that's as good as a response as you get here. In the case of Senate Bill 67, which we're advocating for right now, it's in the Senate Game and Fisheries Committee. This bill would simply, I call it simply because I think it's the right thing to do, allow the Game Commission to make the decisions on what days of the week people should hunt. And here in Pennsylvania, the Quaker state, it's an old leftover blue law, but all of the facts, in my opinion, fall with those that advocate for the ability to hunt with your family on Sundays, instead of a prohibition. So we want that. But as you said, and in your personal experience, when you instead of yelling at somebody because you get nowhere, you got to sit down with them and try your best to say, look, this is the reason why this is a good thing, and you can often get through.
Yeah, yeah, and and they're there for the next vote too because you haven't turned them off. Yeah,
Right. You turn them
yeah,
off, you've lost them. And
yeah,
the bill that's coming down the pike the next week that you think's an easy one
yeah.
suddenly becomes hard because of the way you treated him or her.
Yeah. And you don't really have to wait for a particular bill. If conservation is important to you, hunting and fishing are important to you, you can just contact your legislator and say, hey, these are issues that are important to me. Please be on the lookout for bills related to this. Or,
Right. And every contact that you have with a legislator, always wrap up with that. Hey, anything, and you've heard me say this, Dawn, and you've said it too. anything in this area, in this realm, that you're working on, that you have a question on, we want to be a resource, whether you agree with us or not. And maybe you don't, but you're going to find out where we stand on things. That's the position you want to be in, that they call you and say, hey, what do you think about this?
Yeah, and especially, I might be wrong with this, but if you have someone who's very new to the legislature, like their first time serving, and they haven't had the chance to engage with constituents in the past, that's a good position to be in for you to get in the door early and be recognized by them.
Oh yeah, they took those jobs. They're in the people business, and so are we. And as I said at the beginning, this legislative process affects us in every part of our life, whether we like it or not. So you better get in. You better get involved. What's the old saying? If you don't have a seat at the table, you're on the menu. And that's happened a lot of times in the hunting and fishing world in this country. It's very unfortunate, and you can't reel a lot of that stuff back. No pun intended.
Yeah, and I want to go back to a point you made earlier that I forgot to make. When action alerts going out, and we talk about bills moving, and we do it at key points. Just because you don't hear something about a bill doesn't mean that nothing's happening with it or no one's working on it. So like John's in Harrisburg every day as our eyes and ears and advocating for us in the Capitol. I go 2, 3, 4 times a session to go visit Harrisburg and meet with legislatures. And we're talking about bills, even if there's no moving yet, we're making there is some effort being made. So there's something behind the scenes. So if you happen to call if you happen to want to contact your representative at any time, it's not a bad time. Just because you're not hearing something about a bill doesn't mean that something isn't happening in the hallways of Harrisburg.
Absolutely. In the case of Backcountry, the Pennsylvania chapter, it's not just me, but it's Dawn and the entire board. I mean, well, today is Thursday. I think I've talked to you 3 times this week on other various things. Don't even affect that. So, we're constantly in contact, working on things. That's why the action alerts are timed, they're strategic, and they're very, very, very important when they come out.
Yeah.
They're designed, at least from our standpoint, to have the most impact at that time.
Yeah. So, I think we've covered just about everything we were going to cover tonight.
Yep.
I'll give everybody homework. Look up your legislature and make a call and tell them about one thing that's important to you. And you do it now because no one's going to pick up the phone and you don't have to talk to anybody. And if everybody does that, our voices will be heard. And I think we don't use our voice enough, and that's not good for us. It's not good for conservation. It's not good for wildlife. And I really, really think that it's important that we use our voice on a regular basis.
Right. And just to wrap up on my end too, remember the number of legislators who engage in the activities that we do are continue to dwindle. That makes our voice that much more important to be heard. Really does.
Okay. So if you want to learn more about what we're doing, you can check us out on backcountryhunters.org. We have our Facebook page, Pennsylvania chapter of Facebook. We have BHA PA on Instagram. If you're on our email list, you'll get action alerts and updates. I try to put out a legislative update in the beginning and the end of every session. So what bills have popped up, what we're working on, what we're looking at, and bills we're for, bills we're against. If you want to use that as a resource. And we're also have an event coming up in October, our Bustin' Clays. It's our second annual Bustin' Clays event in Carlisle. Information is up on our Facebook page and up on the website. It's a great day to go out, shoot some skeets, have some fun. And it was part of the pun, a blast last year, and we're gonna do it again this year. So thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you, John. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Don.
Everybody, go call a legislator.
Stay involved.